Well, thank you very much. Well, it's timing is everything, they say, I guess, in comedy and most of life. We put out some news this morning that was pretty exciting about we think we're on our way to a better understanding PLN, and hopefully that'll lead to a discovery. I think Mr. Talbot said there's pretty significant what we found. But before we jump there, not everybody might know our story a little bit. So um, we had been in the uranium business in 1996, and Fission 3.0, excuse me, a chest cold still. We started back in 1996 in my basement, a company called Strathmore Minerals, which uranium was $7 and people thought we're nuts. And we used to go to conferences and people like being that redheaded stepchild that nobody wanted to talk to. And then of course, we know what happened in 2005 and 7. The assets we bought for practically nothing went on to be worth almost $500 million because the commodity went from 7 to 140. Along the way, we were able to get some support from Sumitomo. So what happened is we had these Canadian US assets, we split them, and Strathmore kept the US ones and eventually got sold to Energy Fuels. And we took the Canadian ones, and a guy named Peter Grosskopf took us public, called Fission Energy. And very fortunate, within weeks of going public, the government of Korea through its KEPCO funded all our work, and we made a discovery which we later sold to Denison. We only put up 100 grand. We sold that for 85 million. So we try to use that idea that's our mind, our properties, other people's money as much as you can. So Fission Energy then split into two. We sold off everything on the east side of the basin to Mr. Lundin and Denison, and we took what was on the west side and new company called Fission Uranium, which made the R discovery, which is today, I'm guessing around $600-700 million company. Stock's about $1 today. And then we took what was the other properties in it that weren't strictly development, they were exploration, became Fission 3.0. That's why we call ourselves Fission 3.0, because this is our third shot at it with the same management team. So why does that matter? Well, I think that uranium is very hard to find in the Athabasca, very difficult. And as people learned, there's two types of deposits, the unconformity deposit and the basement one. And we're fortunate enough with Ray and Ross, they've been able to make a discovery at the unconformity, which was the J zone out on the east side, and the discovery of R, which is in a basement hosted. And that's important because, we have been able to make discoveries on both sides. And now if you look at our properties here, all the green ones are properties we picked up in a bear market when everybody is looking at marijuana or whatever they were doing with the shells. We stayed in uranium, didn't move to gold, we stayed there, and we were able to tie up all these projects. Every project we own, we staked. Didn't buy a single one, we staked them all because what happens when momentum players leave a space, and we were able to grab these. Now, to best understand the basin, everybody said you had to be on the east side because that was Cigar Lake and MacArthur. It makes sense. And they said there's no way there's any uranium on the west. Well, our guys believe differently. We believe that what was the basin today was actually bigger, and we believe there's still deposits out there. So that's why a lot of our properties are not technically in the basin, because this is the basin we see today, not millions of years ago. And that's how what we did is we flew an airplane very close to the ground, which high resolution, we picked up these boulders on the ground or outcrops we were looking for. We found them, went up ice, and that's how R was found. So these are our properties. There's 16 of them. This year we will spend about $12.5 million on 4 or 5 of these properties, depending on how the drilling goes. And the ones we're going to are doing this winter is PLN, which is very close to Next Gens, and Fission Uranium's R, right close, that's PLN. And we're also going to do work on others, Hardy Bay and etc. But what I'm going to do is hand this over to Ray Ashley to talk about the significance of what we found this morning. It's not a discovery from my perspective. It's giving us sniffs. We always say you've got to find the sniffs first, the right biochemistry, the right structures before you can hit and have another major discovery like Arrow or Triple R. So we feel we've made a significant step on the weekend in making the discovery. So Ray, perhaps you can talk about this new conductor we hadn't tested before, and maybe even talk about what I consider not just a fine gentleman, but the best uranium analyst is Dave Talbot. You can talk about what he said, the significance of this. Go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Deb. Yeah, you're right. That's, we haven't intersected your mineralization, uranium high grade, but what we have done is got a narrow interval of anomalous geochemistry, 510 counts per second on a handheld SINT. And in combination with other geological features that are important, tell us that we stand to be onto something here. So if the map that's being shown there is the PLN property and the Broach Lake target area, we went drilling there at the beginning of the winter, and that's the first time we've drilled in that area. You can see the blue lines are the conductors that have been defined by airborne and ground EM, and there they are, northeast trending, parallel to the Patterson Lake structural corridor that hosts the Triple R and Arrow deposit, and 9 kilometers to the north. So we are planning to drill 5 holes there. The first 3 holes, the 3 have been drilled, and we're now moving to the 4th hole. And the news release from this morning describes the anomalous radioactivity in the 3rd hole. And it's the first hole on that new conductor. It's small printing there, but it's a conductor that was defined by ground geophysics done at the beginning of the winter. So, what's important to us, the first 2 holes were both intersected dravite, which is a boron-rich clay mineral. And the 2 holes were along strike from each other, and we hit the same zone in both of them. We know that dravite, in our experience, dravite clay often occurs close to high-grade uranium, so that's a good sign. In that 3rd hole on the new conductor with the anomalous radioactivity, that was intersected 80 meters below the top of basement. The unconformity was at 290 meters. And 150 meters further down that hole, there was a big 30-meter wide graphitic myelinitic structure intersected, which is clearly the conductor. That's what we're looking for, big structures and sniffs of radioactivity. So we're encouraged by what we see at Broach Lake. The drill's been moved to the 4th hole along strike, 300 meters to the northeast, where there's a cross-cutting resistivity low. And then there'll be a 5th hole as well before this winter program's completed. Yeah, so what did Mr. Talbot, he said, he talked about the big structure, and he really has recognized what we're saying too. With the downhole gamma probe, that was a corresponding zone that the counts per second were with a handheld SINT, the 510 counts per second. That was confirmed with the downhole probe that had a maximum of 2,800 counts per second with the downhole probe. Oh, we can't hear you, Dev.
Sorry, I was coughing it over. Yeah, and I think 2,800 is pretty significant, given other people have made a lot more noise about less. And so that's PLN. We're going to spend about $12.5 million this year on our projects. The next one we're going to start in a couple of weeks is on not Lazy Edward, but Hardy Bay. In Hardy Bay. This one is fascinating to us because Hardy Bay is on, people think of Cigar Lake, but originally all the uranium started up in Uranium City up north. And this project has been drilled before. Boulders were found a long time ago, but the model the chemical was looking for was more of an unconformity model. So they were only going to drill where they found sandstone because that's what they believed. Now we've got a different idea already based on some of the work we've done.
Yeah, you bet. I don't know, Jamie, if you could find the Hardy Bay slide, but at any rate, Hardy Bay is, yeah, there it is. El Brochet, you can see there with the historic boulder trains on them. Those boulder trains were discovered in the 70s. We did work in a big program in the summer of 2019 and confirmed the presence of high-grade boulders in that train. Historically, there was 3%. We found even small boulders with even higher grades than that. And then in 2019, what we did, Cameco did a lot of work in the 70s, and we reviewed that in detail. And they concluded that the ice direction was to the northeast, and they brought drills to bear, and eventually they concluded that the source of the mineralization that it ended up in those boulder trains was at the right straddling the edge of the basin. So when they found the edge with drilling, they put 70 drill holes at the edge of that basin, and they never did find the source and eventually left. We think they were on the right track from having geomorphologists look at this in detail, that they were actually going in the right direction. And so we did a high resolution marine seismic survey up ice from where they stopped drilling. And there's been several targets, well, 17 targets were generated that are at the intersections of structures, and also where we think there's outliers of sandstone, so that there's more sandstone beyond what the previous historical work where they thought the edge was. So the targets are defined. There's a winter road that goes between Stony Rapids and Uranium City. We've already built a spur road on the ice off that road. So there's access already been built to the target area. And about March 15th, there'll be a drill mobilizing there for us to test those. They're a combination of marine seismic targets and airborne magnetic targets. And really the airborne mag even supports our hypothesis that the edge is slightly beyond where the historic work thought it was. So we're, those holes are ready to go, and the targets are defined, and yeah.
Great, well, thank you. Yeah, so those are our two main projects. We're going to be drilling, we'll continue to one more hole here, and we've got a bunch of holes going to Hardy Bay if we have time. But the good news is we have, and this is something which we have taken for granted, a lot of people can't say that, in that we've got a great drilling crew. Bryson, they started with us. We made the Water Bay discovery. So we got the drillers, we got people. In tough times, we were able to hang on to properties and our people. It meant some of us, like myself, never took salaries in that time. So we've got the right team. And I think, and those of you who follow the uranium space, I love the chemicals and Ross and Lee and Courier and those guys. Well, but I do think everybody should have room in their portfolio for an exploration stock. All these uranium stocks are going to go up. There's no doubt about it. I believe that prior to this waking up and realizing we need energy and we need to have our own supply of energy, we can't count on Russia like Germany does for most of its, half its oil, half its gas, coal. People want, so it'll be interesting seeing what happens to the price. But even before that, the whole idea of going to green and low emissions, for the first time, people are waking up that, the problem is you can't get the wind. Sometimes this year was the worst year. In 2020, we had the worst wind year in Europe, and that's why they had to use a lot more coal. And unfortunately, the advent of batteries has not kept up. I think they had 90 seconds of storage of energy. That's about all these little batteries will hold. So, green energy has to be, when you talk about it, has to include under the tent nuclear. So even prior towards Russia invading Ukraine, which is very sad, a lot of lives are being lost, and I get it, energy's going up. But prior to that, people are realizing that uranium is a place to be. So Fission 3.0 will go up with all the uranium stocks as the price goes to 70. In my view, I believe that's where it has to be at least before we start turning on taps, maybe even 80. And that means all these stocks go up. But if you can make a discovery, you're going to have a 500%. bagger, not just move up, 100%. So anyways, I hope that you guys look at Fission and include it in part of your portfolio.
Ray,
I
we had one question, Ray.
Yeah,
You just told-
thanks,
you just told-
Jamie. Yeah.
Okay.
I was just about to ask Ray. Thanks, Jamie.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Ray, there was a question on the line here from Dick Wolf. Could you just touch on the type of clay found near high-grade uranium again and its relevancy to Fission 3.0? Sorry, Jamie.
Yeah, absolutely, Bruce. It's called dravite, and it's a boron-rich clay mineral. It's our experience from working at J Zone and at Triple R is that there's dravite clay found proximal to the high-grade uranium. It doesn't mean that dravite can also be found. It's not only found there, but that's a good sign. When we found a 30-meter wide major graphitic structure, and near that we're getting dravite clay on the same structural trend in the same corridor of conductors. These structural corridors often contain several parallel conductors. It's a wide shear zone with multiple structures along it. So that dravite boron is a pathfinder element that's often found in association with the Athabasca high-grade uranium deposits. You saw on the PLN map and where we're going to be drilling this summer to the northwest of Broach Lake is the A1 conductor. And yeah, you see it there, the A1 conductor. We drilled there in 2014 and 2019 and also found anomalous uranium. There was higher counts there. Anomalous pathfinder elements, including uranium. So at A1, there was also dravite clay close to the mineralization that we drilled there. And interestingly, there's more dravite at Broach in the first two holes at Broach than there was next to the mineralization at A1. Can't hear you, Bruce.
Thank you for that, Ray. So listen, I'd like to thank Fission 3.0 for being with us today. And I think I'm going to say it, recap of what Dev said, and because I do truly believe what he said. You've got a fantastically well-endowed exploration story here with wonderful projects, and you've got a team that has a history of finding and developing world-class deposits, all in a very small market cap. And as Deb said, you have portfolios are all about a group of stocks, and this should be part of everyone's portfolio.